Good morning, good evening, and good night. We're talking about nights today. That's a reference to what is it? The Truman Show. For anyone who's old. Uh, today I'm joined by two guests. We're talking about nights today. So I'm joined once again by Shagraw, who people who have seen the previous videos will recognize.
Hello.
And I'm also joined by the lovely Steve Joel. Steve, would you like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Well, thanks for having me on. First of all, really appreciate the invitation. Yes, from the far side of the world in New Zealand. What I do, what I'm into, I play Imperial Knights. I've started Blood Angels actually, but for the past couple of years, I've been playing exclusively Imperial Knights at events, and I just love them, man. I love the lore. I love painting them. I love that with the Cerastus Knights, you can get creative with the posing and I love the way they play, and that might just be because, as you alluded to, or I don't know if you're alluding to me, but I am old. I got the reference, and only having 10 models to move around the table is kind of nice. It means games are over quicker, and my back can take a break, and yeah, and I just like I've really enjoyed everything about them. So I've been focusing just on them, and every time I think, oh, you know what? I'm going to go and try something else. I'll build my Blood Angels. I'll have a run with Blood Angels. Every time I start looking at that, then something comes up. They do an update where there are points reductions, or they bring out a new model, or in this case, bring out a new detachment that I just have to try. So I'm back into the Knights again.
Oh, and a new night as well. But yeah, I wasn't jamming you specifically with the age thing. It's more the fact that I was looking up that film beforehand because I remembered the reference, and it's almost
Yeah,
30
yeah.
years old now, and I felt old.
Oh my God, is it
It's
really? Oh,
28 this year. Yeah.
it's crazy.
Oh,
Um, And if I may just plug also the pod. So the other thing I do is I do I've done quite a lot of podcasting over the last few years. And the most recent effort is a podcast called 40K by Night. So it's all very Knights focused, mostly Imperial, but with a smattering of chaos as well. We have some people who are much better players than me who come on as expert guests, and it's every kind of couple of weeks. It's very sporadic actually, but I might release a couple in a week and then nothing for a few weeks and then another few. But it's supposed to be every couple of weeks where we put out content. And then when something happens, like you get a new model and a new detachment, we go nuts and kind of do a whole bunch of episodes all in a short space of time.
that makes sense. It's
I
good
want
to
to
be. Oh,
I want to take credit for this episode. Steve was my recommendation. I'm actually I'm a big listener of the pod. In fact, I want to use my one allotted plug to also plug the 40K by Night podcast. That is
Excellent.
it's
I'll
top
take it.
3 on my priority list when I start painting. If there's a new episode, that's on the painting watch list.
Oh, wow. Well,
absolutely.
thank you for that recommendation. I'll take that. That's amazing.
I'm now also going to plug because now I've mentioned this on my channel previously, but these are starting to slowly be added to Spotify, so people can listen to these on the go as well now.
Right.
Yay, podcasts. But yeah, Shakrot, you also play Knights, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I've been on it before for Emperor's Children, um, and I do consider the Emperor's Children my army. Like I said in that episode, got into Warhammer with Assault on Black Reach. I must have been about 10, and from literally my first moment in this game, Emperor's Children were the army I wanted to play. And the thing about Emperor's Children was edition after edition. There was a rumor that they were coming just around the corner. There's a new leak. We're getting Emperor's Children just around the corner. And I never wanted to start like Emperor's Children until they got their codex. I didn't want to like build up models and then they're not in the book anymore. So I was like, do you know what? My next favorite army is Knights. Not as much as Emperor's Children, but I'll play Knights. That lasted 10 years. I ended up playing entirely Knights for pretty much like like most people, I play Warhammer on and off, right? It wasn't 10 years straight of playing.
Right.
But like pretty much every edition since Assault on Black Greed. I mean, I remember when I got into the army, there was 2 knights, right? Paladin and Errant. Um, so I've been playing for a very long time, pretty much just knights.
Right. Yeah, which is so it was similar. Well, not similar. I think a lot of people get into Knights like in that kind of way. I got into Knights because I was playing Space Wolves for a couple of years, and I wanted some kind of like something that could shoot as a support unit. I've got a couple of Armiger Helverins to back in early 8th maybe, and they were kind of supporting my Space Wolves, and then I just kind of started adding to the collection. I really enjoyed them, so when I'm playing Knights and the Space Wolves, I've sold the Space Wolves army now because I was just playing Knights, and the Wolves were sitting on the shelf, and I thought someone else could use those.
So there's a pipeline I'm seeing forming here. I'm
Yeah.
at the start of the pipeline. I own a total of 2 armigers, which I've magnetized, and 1 large knight, which I think is an Acaron, which I've never played because it's been terrible for the last 2 editions.
Yep. No one's ever played the Acaron. that is the one night that everybody like. What's funny is that everybody has their favorite flavor, right? Everybody has their favorite knights, and different play styles prefer different things. But the one thing every Knights player agrees on is that the Acaron is garbage and just doesn't get used. And that the hope for 11th is that we'll find a way to fit the Acaron into list, because it's the one neglected, lonely soul standing out on the edge of the universe by itself with nothing to do.
And no, I would argue the Acaron does actually have an important role in the Codex. What the Acaron does is when someone complains that the Valiant is still the worst knight in the game, you can go, "Oh,
Right.
actually, the Acaron's probably worse."
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think it's also in any army important to have that unit that is just garbage, right? They can't all be good usable units. And you got to feel good about complaining about something. And the Acaron, the Valiant, yes, and the Acaron even more so.
If I recall the one use case I've seen for the Acaron, it's not even a good use case. If I recall correctly, it might be the Admech detachment for knights that lets you like Overwatch with the big knight if it's or something. There's like some bonus thing it can do.
Yeah.
And it
And
has
likewise with the
yeah.
Valiant. So that's the Questa Forge Pact, which was the Grotmus detachment for knights, not Christmas just gone, the one before. And yeah, that has a strat which is not Overwatch. It's not called Overwatch, which is even better because then you can kind of Overwatch twice. So I can't remember what the name of the strat is off the top of my head, but it's 1 CP. You can shoot with 1 gun. And so the Acaron has a flamer, and the Valiant also has a great flamer. So both of those units are arguably viable in Quest to Forge Pact. But you know what? 400 points is a lot
for flamer.
for that one trick. Yeah, with 1 flamer, yeah.
But it is a big flamer.
It's a big flamer, yeah, but as I say, 400 points, and you could do a lot of other stuff with 400 points, or just take a different detachment. Got a shout out to Jind Singh, who's the one man in the world making Quest to Forge Pack work. He's the champion of that one detachment, and he's the guy that will sing its praises all over the world. But I'm not sure if anyone else is actually making it work that way.
I considered it for about 10 minutes because I own an Admech army, and then they removed the army rule from the Admech units for some reason.
Yeah, which is weird, right? So that was the one thing that we were thinking would make it work, and then they removed that rule, said you couldn't use it, which is strange because, for example, the Knights rules, like the Super Heavy Walker and the other rules that apply only to Knights, they still apply to Knights if you use Knights and other detachments. So I'm not sure why the Admech rule doesn't apply when you're using them in Quest to Forge Pact. I don't know, but they took it away, and then so many people who were considering playing the detachment suddenly went, nah.
Yeah.
There are other easier, better things we can do.
Yeah, so I guess for Steve, for you, how long have you been playing Knights then?
Oh, honestly, I think it's a couple of years, maybe 3, but the last couple of years exclusively Knights, like going to tournaments and taking just the Knights. So I want to say I've been through almost every other army, bought and sold every other army, and ended up on Knights and have just exclusively been playing them for a couple of years and really enjoying them and kind of cycling through different detachments and different ideas. I am extremely easily influenced. So every time we do a podcast and we have a guest on that says, hey, you should try this, I'll go, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. And so I'll try that.
Oh, let's give him some horrible ideas, Shavrot. Let's go.
Oh, I've had so many. And also, I'm a mid-tier player who I had a little run of like going 4-1 and podiuming at a couple of events or a few events, and when Knights were really good, and I fooled myself into thinking that I was getting better, but actually it was just that Knights were really good for a little while. They went through their little phase of being not busted, but being really strong.
No, completely fair. Well,
I'm like absolutely bottom tier player. I think to my credit, and this is kind of the nature of Knights, I probably have close to a 50% win rate um,
Right.
with Knight. I took them recently to a tournament. I wasn't even planning to take them, but I've just started ADHD medication, and I'm working my way through a to-do list that's like 10 years backed up. So I've been meaning to repaint my Knights army, and I got them finished. I was like, oh, they look so good. I need to take them out for a spin.
Yeah.
And sorry, I've completely blanked my mind. Whatever point I was trying to make there.
I think the point was that you've got a 50% win rate. You took them to a
Oh,
tournament
yeah,
recently.
sorry.
Yeah.
There we
Or
go.
yeah, I lost every single game. It was the worst. Everything that could gone wrong. And I'm not even talking about like playing the game. But it was just such a nightmare event. Yeah, so I'm as bad as it gets basically. But I think sometimes it's actually nice to have a very low level point of view on an army because not everyone's trying to top tournaments and
Well, and it's interesting actually. That's a great point because, and it's something we've talked about before on the podcast and just with friends and in life. It's I went through a phase a few years ago where I would just get so down if I went to a tournament and didn't do as well as I was wanting to do. You know, if I kind of went in thinking, oh, if I can go 3-2, but I didn't, I just got really down about the whole thing. And my wife had to remind me, like, this is supposed to be fun, right? This is a game. We're supposed to be playing it and having fun. And just that attitude adjustment made a huge difference. And so now when going to an event, the goal is meet some new people, have fun, talk nonsense. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast.
Oh yeah, you're fine.
But okay, talk shit, roll dice, have fun, meet new people. And if I win some games, cool. That's great. But I think the goals going in just had to be adjusted for me so I could just keep enjoying the game and keep having fun. And I think it's important to, if you are a person who rightfully can expect to go and win an event and that's your goal, then great. Or to go 4-1 or 3-2 or whatever. But there are so many things out of your control, right? You go to an event and you just come up against, you can design your list. And I don't know how many times I've done this. You design your list thinking, okay, there's so much, say, fly in the meta at the moment. There's lots of Tau, there's lots of Necrons, there's lots of whatever. So I'm going to take all anti-fly. And then you go to an event, you come up against no units that have the fly keyword in 5 games. And so that whole effort was wasted. And it's just, there's so many things beyond your control. You design a list and you come up against, round one, the thing that can just smash it to bits. And so already you're kind of on the back foot. So you just got to go and have, me anyway, my goal is to just go and have fun, go and enjoy the event and enjoy the games and have fun talking to people.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say I'm sort of like somewhere in like the mid-level, I guess. Like I can fairly regularly do okay at tournaments, and my mentality tends to be going into tournaments. I will always go in with the mindset of I don't necessarily care about what my win rate is, but game by game, I'm always trying to see how I can maximize the score I'm getting. Because then I don't necessarily feel bad, even if I lose, because I'm like, oh, I got beaten by this good player, but I still like was 10 points behind them, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying I don't try and win.
Oh yeah, no, not at all.
I do want to win, and you spend so much time designing the lists and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I just think going into the event, if winning is my only goal, then I'll inevitably come out a bit disappointed.
Sure. I mean, sometimes it's just fun to have ulterior goals going into the event, just like whether it's a silly list or just some side goal. Like I was talking to Folger Piles earlier this week about his agents run.
Wow.
Where he ended 4th at Adepticon with agents. It wasn't planning to, but
yeah. Agents are, I get a hard time because we had an event here where I won my first 4 games out of 5, and then I played in the final against agents. And everybody was like, okay, well, you're playing against agents. They're like the crappiest army in the world. And I got smoked by agents in the final of this event. And so I had to go on my podcast and admit what had happened against a very good player, local player.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just completely underestimated the army. And I think that when you're playing agents, and there are a lot of other armies like this where GSC would be another one where you just don't see them very often. And so you don't really know what they do. And it's super easy to underestimate, what they can do and how they can score points. And yeah, Folger's great. I was watching him on stream at that event. He's such a good player. And there's a lot to learn from watching a guy like that.
Yeah, so we sort of strayed into general like tournament philosophy, I guess, to a degree there, but nice.
Nice. Yes. Sorry.
Nice.
Yes. I just sidetracked us.
So, Steve, you said you've been playing for a couple of years. So did you start in 10th or did you sort of start at the tail end of ninth?
That's a great question. I think tail end of ninth probably is when I started playing them more. But certainly for all of 10th, I've been playing pretty exclusively playing knights.
No, that makes sense. So I guess to both of you, how do you feel about how Knights has sort of changed over the years? I guess Shagrot actually might have weirdly more to say on this because he's played it longer. But
I actually have I have an anecdote I'd like to share for this, right?
oh boy,
Because I had a game recently. It was it was actually my first time going to the locals around here. I live in an absolute hellish shithole. But so I never even bothered going to the locals. But it turns out we actually have quite a nice local scene that I'm actually going to quite regularly now. Um, so I took my knights out, and I think for anyone that's actually played against knights knows that like knights have a legacy. They are in contention with Tau for probably the least popular army in the game to play against. Um, it's a serious issue with the army. But I think there's actually not a change to the knights. Knights have received a lot of change this edition, but there's been a change to the game, which is like huge for knights. I played Spearheaded Arms. I tend to play Spearheaded Arms anyway, but I was playing Spearheaded Arms, which I think direction wise is absolutely what knights need. And I was playing against a fairly new player, but there was another knights player at this local. They knew knights, and we played the game. It was very close. We come to the end, and my opponent said to me, he goes, "I can't believe how engaging this game of knights was. It was specifically because of the spearhead like rules. But with spearhead, like you have one or two big knights, and then loads of little knights. And your opponent needs to decide: am I going to target the armigers to stop you scoring, or am I going to target the big knights to stop the armigers from benefiting? And the answer to that question changes every turn. You need to look at the state of the
Right.
game and decide what the answer to that is. And that's a level of dynamism.
dynamism.
It's a dynamic aspect this army has practically never had. I think that's such a good direction for the army. And the other thing I think is huge for knights, I think lethal hits is the best thing to ever happen for knights. Like the auto wounding has always existed, but now it's a keyword they slap on like every other detachment. People are just so much more like small arms fire just isn't wasted anymore. You know, there's such easy access to lethal wounds. I feel like we're in a bit of a turning point with the direction they had. It was not exactly because like they were very strong for most of this or for a lot of this edition, so there's still a bit of sourness. But I do think even if they're not balanced very well, I think that they're heading in such a good direction. I think the changes around the game are really benefiting knights.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right. There is still a situation, or there is still when you turn up to the table, there are some armies that just can't deal with knights. Although these days most can. Like it's very rare now to come up against someone that will look at your 28 wound model and go, "Oh, that's just too much. I can't cope." Lots of armies are, built to take down Catan or whatever else is on the table, tanks, land raiders. And if they can do that, then they can take down knights. But you still do find it. There's a kind of a dichotomy when you go up there that they either can handle getting rid of the big models, or if you can just delete a couple of the units, then they're really going to struggle into you, and you just kind of auto win the game. So I still think it's like, and that's the issue with knights. It's one of the hardest armies to balance, right? It's one of the most challenging armies to kind of, I think, for G-Dub to get their head around balancing in the game. And they've just given us back a detachment now where we get a 6-up Feel No Pain, which people are pretty excited about. But does that break the army again? I don't know. We're going to have to kind of see how that plays. But I think previously having the toughness that we had and a 6-up Feel No Pain and the ability to rotate ion shields on everything just was really strong. As you say, though, lethal hits is just good. It's good for the game. It's good for everybody. It's good that armies are able to bring knights down, and they're not going to feel too bad turning up to a table. But then sometimes we turn up to a table and the army we're facing is just like, oh man, they've got so many guns. I'm going to have a real hard time. Like it's either really strongly one way or the other. It tends to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be matchups. Like, I mentioned the agents again because it was mentioned earlier. That's one where if you're playing that army, you run into knights, you're like, well, I'm going to have to throw bodies at the objectives until I hopefully win on primary because I'm not killing them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that is how you win, right? If you've got an army like GSC or even some Necron builds or lots of guard armies. I know they have the firepower to shoot knights to death, but guard are hard to play because they've also got a lot of small bodies, and we just generally don't have anything that can chew through, say, 20 dudes in a unit. So swarming objectives or tying knights up so that they will have to fall back and then get in again. That's how you traditionally have been able to beat them, or recently have been able to beat them. The new detachment, there are a couple of detachments that give you tools against being tied up, but it does make it a lot harder if you're constantly having to fall back and then try and do stuff.
Sure. And I guess to a degree, that's probably a good weakness to have in there as an option for people to work around some of the problems that knights might pose to certain archetypes of armies. I'll actually be, I mean, we can talk about 11th a little bit later on, but one of the things that I'll be interested to see is how the sort of change to what we've seen so far. Obviously, we don't have all the information yet, but the stuff to do with the different ways you can sort of score now, because you'll now pick in the army building one of the 5 things of like how you want to score. And I'd be interested to see how that affects stuff like knights, and on the opposite end, stuff like recon guard, and how those like interact with each other when they face each other.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I guess to get into knights in terms of like rules, knights have always had the sort of theme of like, is it like the sort of codes and like Code Chivalric or whatever it's called, is their army rule now? And that has changed a couple of times this edition, I want to say. I'm not entirely familiar with the current state of it. I know it was different in the index, if I recall.
Yeah, it was. Shagar, I don't know if you want to take this and talk through the code. Valor.
I'm not a fantastic candidate to talk about this because I've played this entire edition, or at least since we had the Codex, believing you didn't get the bonus until you completed the quest. So I've barely been using it.
Right, you made life a lot harder for yourself. So
yeah,
the way the Code Chivalric works is you have basically 3 deeds that you're trying to achieve and 3 qualities that you can claim. And the qualities, you can claim one of those qualities right from the start of the game. There is a detachment, which has been very popular, which allows you, once you've achieved your first deed, to then choose a second quality. And the qualities are, there are always 2 that people love, and then the third one hardly anyone ever uses, which is always the way with everything. But one of the qualities is you get to reroll a hit roll and a wound roll. Another one is you can add 2 inches to your movement, plus 1 inch to your advance, plus 1 inch to your charge, which is really strong in some of the detachments. And the other one gives you objective control, extra 2 on your OC, which, that could be strong in certain circumstances, but is hardly ever taken because the reroll is so good and the movement is so strong in some detachments. And there was a bit of confusion about how that works in the most recent version of it. So you get to choose a quality which is applicable right from the start of the game. And then you get to choose a deed. And once you've achieved your deed, you become honored. When you become honored, in some of the detachments, it means very little, almost nothing, but you do get some CP. You get some bonus CP. But in a couple of detachments, you also get some bonuses on some of the strats you're using or some of the, some of the rules you have. So the deeds you have to achieve, one of them is you've got to pick a character and kill it. And if you kill it, you become honored. And the good thing with that one is you let your opponent know that this is my plan. This is my deed I'm going to do. I want to kill a character, but you don't have to pick which character until after your opponent has deployed. That kind of means if they're an army that's full of characters, if they're playing greater demons and they're just lined up across the table with greater demons, once they put everything down, you get to go, right, I'm going to kill that one that I think is wanting to charge me or is likely to. But then they get agency to move that character back or mess around with you. Another one of the deeds is that you've got to control more objective markers on the table, but that's at the end of your opponent's turn. Is so hard to do. I mean, it's like they get to just come and kill you off. I have found that one of the harder ones to achieve. And the other one had a big change mid everything. It started out being the easiest and best one, and then now it's become just as hard as the other two. Which is if the number of enemy units you've destroyed is higher than the turn, right? So in turn 2, if you destroy 3 units, then you become honored. It used to be, excuse me, considered cumulative. So that if you kill a unit in turn 1 and then in his turn 1 and then another one in turn 2, you've killed 3 units. Turn 2, great, you're honored. But they FAQ'd it a couple of months ago, actually maybe just before Christmas, to say now it's not cumulative, it's in that turn, in the same turn. So you have to, in turn 2, kill 3 units to become honored. And obviously, the later in the game it goes, just the harder it becomes to achieve.
Yeah, I
So,
think there's definitely interesting play in terms of like picking one that makes your opponent play in a certain way. That second one in particular to me is interesting because while it's probably not the easiest thing to complete, it does tell your opponent you now have to walk stuff out.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Which is an
You're right.
interesting way to play because maybe it's an army you're playing against that doesn't want to throw stuff onto the objectives on turn 1 and 2. Maybe something like Eldar where they want to score high on turn 4 and 5 or something. It's interesting.
One of the interesting, so Brian Jones, who's obviously a very, very good player and a regular guest on our podcast, he's a fan very often of just rolling the dice because if you you can choose one and you get a bonus 2 CP when you become honored, but if you just roll the dice on it, you get 3 CP when you become honored. Now, one of the detachments, which has been probably the go-to detachment until Freeblade Company was just released by Games Workshop, the last few days. Questoris Champions. Is that right? You see, Questoris Companions.
Okay.
So that's the one that Brian Jones and another guy named Dustin Hammond went to Cherokee, and that's all focused on the big knight. So people are taking 5 big knights in a detachment and taking Questoris Companions, and off they go. There are different ways of playing it. Dustin loves to just load up on lances and atroposes and just go full combat, sending things into the opponent's line. But if you become honored in that, so the great thing with that detachment is you choose your quality. I'm going to say movement, for example. I get an extra 2 inches of movement on a lance, which puts it up to 16. Plus, I'm getting an extra 1 inch on my advance and another on the charge. And there's a strat that lets you advance and charge. You can fire that thing right across the table. When you become honored, you then get to choose another quality. So then you can choose rerolls. So you're rerolling 1 hit and rerolling 1 wound in every fight and shooting activation for every unit. That's really strong as well. So if you can get honored as quickly as possible, then your army is buffed up to the eyeballs and it becomes really, really strong. It is just slightly harder to get honored now.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I think it's an interesting angle. If I recall, was the character one? Is that the one that used to be you had to kill a warlord in the index or something like that? I think it was one of the
Yes,
only.
you never took that. It was horrible.
Yes, it was one of the only
Yeah.
rules in the game that actually cared about warlords specifically.
That's right. Yeah.
I
yeah.
am.
And
I have two gripes with the army rule as it is currently. Firstly, it gives you 2 CP when you complete it.
Yep.
That weirdly breaks the rules of the game. Like it has text in the book saying it's fine, it's allowed because there's the hard limit on how much CP you can generate. That will get the judge called on you so much. I had the judge called on me 3 times during that.
Really?
People like just don't, not like in a like they're not like annoyed or anything, but they're telling me like, I know it says, I'll show them the book, like, yeah, it says 2 CP, but there's like an errata saying you can only ever gain 1 CP, and I'm like, oh yeah, but no, there's another errata that says Imperial Knights this rule specifically can, so you have to get a judge. It's kind of annoying. It's not a biggie though. The thing I actually don't like about this rule is I think it is a bit of a flavor fail to have the to start with the quality, and I know why they've done that. I think the last 2 or 3 editions, you had to complete the quest to do the quality. And there's 2 issues with that. You can't have a very powerful army rule tied to that. because then it's miserable when you don't achieve
Right.
your quests. And some of the quests, like you said, some of the quests were so annoying. Like the Warlord one, that basically reads Logan Grim now sits at the back of the board all game. Right? That's what
Yeah.
that one does. You
Yeah.
don't pick that one. So I understand why it had to change. But I think if they really didn't want to do that anymore, because they stuck with that for a while, and it was too frustrating when you didn't pass. I don't know. I think maybe they should have just made a new rule. I'm not too fond of the quest, and you start with the reward.
Yeah, I wonder if it couldn't have been smaller, easier to achieve quests, like little side quests that you have to go on. But then the
Mm.
reward is smaller as well, maybe because the thing with the current way it's done, only in that detachment though. In that detachment, um, the one where you get to choose another quality, that's really strong. Um, the the other detachment, Spearheaded Arms, which is the one which is just armager spam, which is another quite popular choice for people to take and play. It has a couple of small bonuses that you get. The CP become really, really important and really strong. Freeblade, the latest one that's come out, there is no mention of being honored in that at all.
Mm.
So I just wonder if in 11th the plan is just to take that mechanic away from the army completely. I don't know, but there is no mention. You would still, I mean, you still have to, according to the Code Chivalric, choose your deed, choose your quality, etc. And then once you achieve your deed, you get the CP. So that is the benefit because it's quite a CP hungry detachment. But there is just no mention of being honored in the specific detachment rules. So I just wonder if that's going to be phased out
Yeah,
at
I
some
think
point.
again that is like a consequence of like past frustrations. I mean,
Yeah.
you do have the CPU. I did actually read through the book fully recently, and I was actually shocked how little being honored's mentioned.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting to know. Sorry.
Yeah. It's very little. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I was going to add to this because you'd mentioned the CP cap thing. If I recorded this a year ago, I would have been like, I wonder if Games Workshop is going to add a keyword that says uncapped CP or something. Because prior to the Votan Codex, they had the exact same thing where if you killed the guy with the Judgment Token on turn one in one of the detachments, you gained 3 CP or something, and it had the same
Right.
like text at the end saying this ignores the CP cap. I'm sure there's one other instance somewhere else that I can't think of it off the top of my head. But since they've removed the Votan one, this is now one of the only things that does this still, which is interesting to think about. But on the flip side, Knights, for whatever reason, technically have 4 army rules. This is just the first one.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Code Chivalric, however you want to say it, is the first of them. The other thing that we can do is obviously hand out bondsman abilities, which are
I
great.
did
I
not know
mean,
that was an
this is.
army rule. Did not know that.
Sorry, say that again.
I didn't know that was like tied to an army rule. I just thought
Yeah.
that was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the army rules we have, along with free blades and super heavy walker. But and so bondsman. I mean, that's a data sheet ability for the knight. So I don't know. I know super heavy walker carries over, but say you're using a big knight and a small knight, for example. I don't know that you would, but if you did take that as a support for your blood angels or your custodies,
Well, you
I
can't.
don't know if you then get to hand the bondsman ability to the small knight.
Well, you can't do that because you can either take up to 3 armigers or 1 big knight. You can't do both.
Right. Okay.
So
So
you
it wouldn't
can't get
apply
Bondsman
anyway.
anyway, so that one kind of is a wash there because of that.
Right. Okay. So bondsman ability is for people who haven't played knights. This is where a big knight gets to hand out a very specific ability to a small knight. This is which I do like. It's quite themey, right? It's the armigers run around. They are basically they bonded to big knights and the stories and the lore of the army. You'd usually have probably 2 or 3 small knights, which are like the squires, if you like, to their lords, and they're running around doing the bidding of their lords. So having a bondsman ability where the big knight gets to say to the small knight, you will shoot better, or you can run further and go faster, or you can. So the lancer, for example, hands out the bondsman ability is that it can tell a small knight you can advance and charge. So on a warglaive, that becomes quite good. Particularly in some of the detachments, if you choose the movement buff and then your warglaive is moving 14 inches, plus it's got an extra inch on the charge and advance, and you tell it to advance and charge, then that gives it quite a big threat range, right? Uh, the the other one is the errant, which I love. This one is it gives assault to say a warglaive or a helverin, so that can then advance and shoot. Each of the big knights has a very specific bondsman ability, and some of them are a waste of time, and some of them are really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting ones in there. I think one I ran into that was really annoying recently against a friend in a casual game is it the Knight Defender, the newish one?
Yeah.
Hands out -1 damage to
good.
armatures.
So
It's really
good.
annoying.
I think Bondsman are probably the best addition they've ever added to the Knights as an army. I
Yeah.
remember, I think they added that mid edition, like randomly, like a couple editions ago. And that was just such a fun time to play. Oh, it's so good. I love the Bondsman.
Yeah, yeah. And the defender one is really good, particularly in a couple of different detachments. In the spearhead detachment that I was mentioning earlier, the way that one works, which is fantastic, is that if you have a big knight, you can pick up to 3 of the armigers and hand out your buff to 3 different armigers. So the defender is almost an auto include in that detachment where you're going, okay, the defender is going to make 3 of the baby knights who have 14 wounds -1 damage, and then a couple of them are going to go and stand on your natural expansion objective and just be really hard to move.
Mm.
And the other one is in the new Freeblade detachment, which is
Oh,
a 6-up feel no pain. The defender gives -1 damage, and you've got a 6-up feel no pain on a 14 wound armiger. That suddenly becomes, a bit of a challenge. And there's a strat in the Freeblade also that allows you to make a gun -1 to wound if its strength is higher than your toughness. So if you've got an armiger out there that's being shot by, say, las cannons, you can, oh, well, you know what? Those las cannons, which were wounding on 3s, are now wounding on 4s, and I've got a 6-up feel no pain and -1 damage. So it
ow.
just makes things a little more tanky. Good.
Yeah, so I guess the last thing here, other than the Free Blades rule, which is essentially just you can ally this into other armies rule,
Yeah.
um, is your super heavy walker, which is it's also kind of a data sheet rule, but it's kind of knight specific because some other factions that have super heavies don't have this, weirdly.
Yeah, although the new Defiler does, which is interesting. So
That
I
one,
think it's
I'm in a weird camp
so
with that
good.
one because on the one hand, there's issues with it having that kind of rule, but on the other hand, the other variant of that rule where it says this unit can move through terrain that's 4 inches or less basically doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah. So for folks again who are new tonight, super heavy walker basically means you can move over any terrain or models, right, that are 4 inches or less, and that's fine. And you can also move over or through terrain and models that are over 4 inches in height, but you've got to roll a dice, and if on a 1 you become battle shocked. Okay, I'm always going to take that chance.
Yeah,
It's just really, really strong. Having big knights that can just at will walk through walls.
yeah, for sure. I mean,
I think this is like a contentious addition to Knights,
yeah.
especially from like trauma of the early edition. And I think Knights is maybe the last army in the game that needs another difficult lever to balance. But I feel as a legacy player that's played this army every edition since they've been out, this is so necessary. It's unreal. Specifically, the going through walls bit.
Yeah,
Um, the as cool as Knights are, right? They're a popular army because people are so drawn to them. Probably the biggest gatekeeper for so long was that it was just so miserable to move them around the board. You had to play, that little board game where you get a bunch of cards, traffic jam. And you have to try and put them in a way that's gonna you can get them out. That's what playing like knights was. You put them in deployment, and you don't even think about what your opponent's doing. You line them up in a way where you could get them into the middle of the board in less than 2 turns. Because you
yeah.
had to it was so hot. You had to edge them around every corner, and they'd block. It's hot. They need to go through walls. That was another thing added mid edition that was a good change. But yeah, it's certainly hard to balance.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
well, and the other thing was that Chaos Knights already had a rule where they could, for a CP, move a big knight or a couple of small knights through walls, and it just felt so strong. But you're right, you're 100% right that having to move the knights all the way around terrain to do anything, and even if they move 12 or 14, it's still, it's still taking forever, and you've kind of got to line them up, as you say, at least a couple of them on the front line. And there were some deployments, there were anyway, some deployments that just basically funneled everything through the center of the table. You couldn't go around the edges because the bases were too big. So everything had to funnel through the middle. So all your opponent had to do with a gun line was stand back and shoot the dudes that were coming through the middle of the table. It was, okay, cool, done, easy.
Yeah, I think I like the thematics of this rule, like the image of like this gigantic thing just ramming through a wall
Yeah.
makes so much sense. My only issue with it is I dislike how inconsistent the downside is. If that makes sense? Like I feel like I would rather it be like on a 1 to 3 you take 2 mortals or something. Because then you can kind of expect it to happen sometimes, rather than on a 1 in 6 you get ruined in some scenarios. Like I needed to contest this objective and I rolled a 1. Like that doesn't feel good for either player, really. I would rather it be like semi-consistently you take damage or something smaller.
I don't know about like the specific demerit, but I do love the imagery of a knight occasionally stumbling over a building, like tripping up. I've always liked that. That helps that's like sugar on the spoon. That helps it go down when I'm battle shocked for no reason.
I guess I kind of like that part, but I feel like battle shock may not be the best way to represent it in my mind.
That's fair. That's fair.
Partly because battle shock like is one of those rules where it happens so inconsistently in the game, but when it happens, it ruins your entire turn. Sometimes.
I think the reason, actually, this is just coming to me right now. I think the reason it's battle shocked, because I think that's a fairly new addition, the battle shock part of it. I think they wanted a reason for you to take Canis Rex and use his unbattle shock ability.
Yeah, well, and that is strong. Like in a lot of, he's quite expensive now. I mean, Canis Rex again was an auto take for so long, but now he's just at that price point where some people take him, some won't, which I guess is good. I don't hate the battle shock thing just because it does make it a risk. You know, I'm going to walk through this wall. The whole point being, I'm going to stand on the point. But then there are so many times where it just doesn't matter as well. Like there are times where you're going to walk through the wall, and the object of walking through the wall is to put yourself into charge range, and then it doesn't really matter. I mean, it means the Lancer can't use his free tank shock, or there might be strats you can't use because you're battle shocked. But generally, you're walking through the wall either to stand on a point that you want to hold, in which case you need to maybe use some of your smaller, if you have some smaller units, to just make doubly sure that if you are tanked, battle shocked, that's not an issue. Or you're walking through the wall because you want to put yourself within shooting range or charging range. So in which case, being battle shocked doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think from what I know of Knights, the one that will come up most semi-consistently is it would be like you advance through a wall, rolled a 1. Oh, I now can't use my advance and charge strat. That's probably the real feels bad there when that happens.
That's right. Yeah. That is. Yeah, that feels bad.
Yeah.
But you know, life's full of risks, man. You just got to take the risk and literally roll the dice. And
just send it. Nothing bad will happen. I guess the other element of this rule, to a degree, is also Titanic, and the evolution Titanic has kind of gone through this edition as well, because that's been a rule that's had a lot of problems, especially early on, with like the Wraith Knights happening in Eldar, and then Knights themselves having various iterations of it as well. The current state of Titanic seems, I don't want to say fine, but I feel like I've not noticed it as much in the last 6 months as I have towards the start of the edition.
I think that's a good thing, though. I think it's helping Knights a lot, and I think it's good to be not too prevalent. I don't want people hating. I don't want that gone. I'd really like Titanic.
Yeah, the thing with Titanic is that it works both ways, right? So being Titanic means I can just tow into an objective. I don't have to get that giant base wholly onto terrain to be able to shoot through the terrain. But as soon as I tow into the objective, you can see me back. Like you can then shoot me straight back. So I feel like there's a balance in that. And it also, just again, thematically in my head makes sense that these towering things can see over the top of... Actually, I'm talking about the towering rule, aren't I? Not the Titanic keyword necessarily. But
oh yeah, no, I think that's the one I was meant to be talking about, to be fair. So I think you're on the right track anyway.
Yeah, so I love the idea that these giant things can see down over the top of walls that other things might not be able to. So they can therefore shoot you over the top of the walls, but they can also be shot back. So it's again, it's a risky proposition if you want to tow into an objective and shoot something, and then you're just going to get las cannons back in the face, or a Vindicator or whatever puts itself in a position to be able to shoot you back, and you're in trouble. But at least it's balanced in each direction, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the last part here that's under the army rule section is the Freeblades. There's probably not too much to talk about here. Like, there's been a couple of instances during the edition where rules in other armies have made knights too good, or knights have been pointed at weird amounts, and that has just been a more so balanced thing. I think the biggest offender was it the double battle cannon knight in Death Guard? That's a Chaos Knight thing,
Double
but
battling.
yeah.
I was
Yeah,
waiting
yeah,
for
yeah.
that thing.
Because that was because their like aura thing for -1 to save worked on non-Death Guard units, which is a really interesting interaction. I guess we could here almost talk about the opposite, and at certain points in the edition where knights, and they might still be, I don't actually know, have been fairly reliant on having allies brought in as well. Because obviously knights doesn't have like small infantry or anything like that. So that's an interesting part of knights to me. But
Yeah, yeah. So the biggest thing for a long time, I think, was people using the sisters
Mm.
as allies, and so you'd see a lot of lists for a period of time. This has stopped now, but when the index was strong, you'd see a lot of lists that had either one or two tanks full of sisters that could make objectives sticky, and then also those tanks shooting at something would strip cover from it. So that meant your knight, like the paladin. See, the paladin is a good unit, but it's only AP1 on the gun. There's lots of shots, but it's only AP1. And with cover so prevalent, it's not that good. So having something that could strip cover, I'm just really struggling to remember the name of the tank, but you guys probably will.
The Immolator.
Immolator, yeah, that's the one.
The Immolator, that's the one, right? So you put units of sisters inside an Immolator, you'd send the Immolators out. They then pose a reliable Overwatch threat, which is something that we just don't have. Like, Overwatch is just not a thing for knights. So having an Overwatch threat and sticking objectives and stripping cover, that's a really strong combo. It's not as prevalent now, but for a while in the index, it was really, really pretty much in all of the top lists.
Yeah, I mean, there's other things I've seen throughout the edition. I remember at the start of the edition, the Inquisitorial agents were quite popular because they were like 5 dudes with 2 wounds each, and Games Workshop decided to nerf them into the ground because of it. They now are 5 dudes with a 5-up save, 1 wound each, and they're miserably bad.
The other big use case for agents, especially of like small squads like that, is that like knights are an army where you'll finish a list you want to play and you have 130 points left you can't spend.
Yeah. Well, of course, the other big one is the Calidus assassin.
Yes.
That's still very popular, and I love the Calidus in a list for its two big things. One is the Vect aura of 12 inches. That, if you're playing it into an army that just really relies on strats to be able to bring knights down. If you've got an army that has to have its +1 to wound or whatever, so it can bring down a knight, having your Calidus within Vect or of the knights that are going to get charged makes sense. But obviously the other big one is being able to uppy down it, jump up at the end of the opponent's turn and then come back down and score your points. And so she's pretty valuable for that.
Yeah, sure.
And she comes in at 100 points, which, as you were saying, is about the shortfall in a lot of lists that we were making.
Yeah, I guess the last couple that I've seen occasionally in night lists is the Navigator, because for now for 70-ish points you can get a 12-inch no deep strike bubble, which is quite funny.
I was a diehard pure knights person. I don't run agents. I run only knights. I've come around to the Navigator. I played a Navigator. I love that model.
Yeah.
I am known for freaking loving the Navigator. Particularly so in Questoris Champions, which is the detachment we were talking about earlier. One of the big advantages of that detachment and why it has become a popular choice as a competitive list is it has a sticky objectives stratagem. So you're able to, and it's sticky at 5 OC, and the stratagem says that your opponent has to have more OC than you on that point to take it off you. So you still control it if they only have 5 OC on there. So that's really, really popular. But now with Freeblades, you don't have the ability to sticky objectives. So I really love at 75 points putting the Navigator back in there to sit on your home, because you don't want to leave big, expensive units just guarding your home objective. Having the Navigator there, sitting on home with a 12-inch, you can't come here bubble, I really like. Not everybody agrees with me. Better players than me don't think it's that good, but as a person that's not a great player, it's actually just a nice little crutch to lean on.
Yeah, for sure. And besides, he also has a really cool, really wide hat.
Who doesn't love a really cool, really wide hat?
But yeah, speaking of detachments, should we talk about some of them? I've got them on Wikipedia here, so we can sort of rattle through some of them and sort of talk about does this one work? Is there problems with them? The first up here, I've got Valor Strike Lance, which I don't. This wasn't the index one, was it? This is one that came out with the Codex, I believe.
This is one that came out of the Codex, and it was very popular with Brian Jones. Loved this one when it first dropped, and a bunch of players really liked Valor Strike Lance when it first came out. And there are one of the big things with Valor Strike Lance, as opposed to some of the other detachments, is that the strats and the enhancements and things work on all of the knights. Like you can have big knights, little knights. Everyone's getting a benefit from it. And the army rule is everything gets assault. Like all of your knights can.
This is the detachment that caused like hysteria when the Codex was revealed, right?
That's right. They had to immediately nerf it. They did the nerf was almost as fast. You remember when Votan dropped and they nerfed the army basically before the models came out? This was almost as quick.
Yeah,
because the strat
was this like at the peak of like knights being this massive stat check, and then they went, here's a detachment that makes them go faster.
Well, it was the way the strats were worded. The stratagems for Valor Strike said you can pick one or up to 3 big knights, and this works for all of them. So you could have all 3 knights. You pick a point on the table was one thing. You pick a point on the table, and then up to 3 knights, 12 inches from that point, get the benefit of the strat. And it was just broken to have 3 big knights for 1 CP able to do some silly things.
I think that is actually one of the most baffling rule decisions I've ever seen in the game. Okay, like, can you imagine Space Marines having a detachment that was like, pick 1,200 points of models, Armor of Contempt?
Yeah, that's right. So one of them was, for example, all your models have lethal hits. So it's 3 big knights shooting at anything else with lethal hits. So they had to modify that to just make it 1 knight. You can pick 1 knight, you get your stratagem. So the stratagems didn't change. It was just 1 knight rather than 3.
All right, guys. No one point out that technically Deathwatch, the index has a detachment rule that is army-wide lethal hits.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But the other thing in Valor Strike is you still had access to or have access to rotate ion shields, which is something that everything else lost. So none of the other detachments can rotate ion shields. Lots of Knight players cried about that when it first happened, but you still could get it in Valor Strike.
I'm astounded they didn't give it to all the detachments.
Yeah, I don't get it either, particularly given they drop in.
I do think it's a good choice to keep it in this though. Prior to this edition, I think, but prior to 10th edition, 90% of all CP I ever spent was on rotate ion shields.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that was the case. I learned not to. Like, I found if I spent CP on rotate ion shields, as soon as I spent that CP, I would only roll 3s or 5s. So it didn't matter. It just didn't. Like, it was so rare that you would accidentally roll a 4 and make it worthwhile. So I would never rotate unless it was absolutely like, if this knight dies, I lose the game, and so I've got to do everything I can.
I guess from like the Games Workshop's perspective, I kind of understand limiting it a bit, because while it is kind of, from an identity standpoint, your army's armor of contempt, because every knight, except like the really big ones, is with 3-up save base, this is functionally better than armor of contempt in shooting most of the time, unless you're being shot by specifically AP2. Because if you're being shot by AP3 or 4, it's now double or triple armor of contempt.
Yeah. Yeah, and it made you choose when the Codex first dropped. You kind of had to choose. Okay, am I going to go with this detachment with rotate ion shields, or there's another detachment which gives you access to a 6-up Feel No Pain? So you kind of have to choose. But the other big thing with Valor Strike, and I think probably one of the big reasons a lot of the top competitive players love it, is it has a reactive move. So, which is really rare and unusual for a giant knight to be able to just. So you can play around a reactive move really well by towing in, as we talked about the towering rule, right? You tow into a ruin, you can shoot out of the ruin, and then in a lot of armies, they're going to line up to shoot you, and then they're going to move something close to have to charge you to really finish the job off. So as soon as they line up to shoot you and then move a unit too close, you can just step backwards out of that ruin and you're no longer visible to the shooting. There are lots of other ways to play it, but it's just it was quite a strong strat to use, and I think that was one of the big draw cards for Valor Strike.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think reactive moves in general are very strong. I think it's interesting here that it kind of has a different application than a lot of armies have, because most of the time reactive move strats are for infantry, or when they are for vehicles, you don't typically, get that much mileage out of it because you're moving this massive thing. But because of the interaction with the towering / Titanic rules, you kind of get to pull them out of line of fire because of that, which is interesting. I didn't even think about that reading this.
The other quite funny thing, it's up to D6, which is a little bit annoying.
Yeah.
But you can, if you roll high enough on your reactive move, because it's a normal move, you can just walk a knight through a wall. So,
yeah, if you can fit the base, I suppose. Yeah.
If you can roll high enough, you just go whoop, back through the wall. There we go. But that probably hardly ever comes up.
I'm sure it probably happens more with armigers, I imagine, than the big knights because of the base sizes. But
yeah, although armigers can't walk through walls, only the big knights can.
Yes.
But I guess unless they're little walls. But yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like the little ruins you sometimes get on like UKTC or whatever format you play on.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess any closing thoughts for Valor Strike? Does it feel like it's in a better place now? Is it still a viable thing to take?
I think it is. I don't know how you guys feel, but for me, I think Valor Strike is still a popular choice. I mean, the army rule having all of the guns with assault is really strong, right? I mean, you've got warglaves who need to get close to shoot their melters. If you're picking the reroll, this is the other thing we didn't mention earlier. But those warglaves, as compared to say Chaos Knights, the warglaves have a strength 12 melter with 2 shots on one of the arms, and the ability to re-roll 1 hit roll and 1 wound roll makes them much more reliable in shooting. Those guys are so strong as an anti-tank unit. They did get nerfed a little bit because the range went down, and so the melter range went down to 9 inches. But if you've got an army rule that is just, hey, let's advance and still shoot at whatever we want to shoot at, that's pretty strong.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Shagrar, any thoughts?
Truthfully, I have not played Valor Strike.
Yeah.
But I do have a lot to say about the next one, Gate Warden.
All right, we can move on to that.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to shit on this detachment a little bit, but I need to preface this. I want all of 40k's rules in future moving forward to be written like this detachment. This detachment is a fun first detachment, gorgeous, actual thing of beauty. This is how I want 40k to be designed. But this is the least ergonomic detachment rule possible. This is not made to play in an actual game of 40k. It asks you and your opponent to imagine a shape on the board. You have to imagine a line on the board, and you place it. And I think you're supposed to maybe bring I tried bringing a. You can't just put a ruler down because it goes over terrain. I tried bringing one of them limp dick rulers that you measure your waist with. And it looks like a tapeworm just fucking slopped over all the terrain. It looks awful. This is it's almost unplayable how awkward this detachment rule. But just read through some of these rules now. It's a thing of beauty. I think this is my vote. If it wasn't so unhuman to play, so it's awkward, this would be my vote for the most fun detachment in the game. It's just so cool.
Yeah, so this is one you've got to put a line between 2 objective markers, and it can be any 2. So you can pick your home and their home, or your natural expansion and their natural expansion, or just your one in the middle, whatever. And it's got to be. Is it a 40 mil? Yeah. Now I
don't know. I guess it would have been broken. They probably play tested it. I don't know why it couldn't have just been the width of the objective. But you have to place a very arbitrary point, a 40 millimeter line.
Yeah, 40 mil.
I didn't realize it had width. I thought it was just if I'm standing directly on the line.
No, so it's got so you can toe on, the one edge of the line and still be on it. And all of the rules and all of the strats and the buffs and the enhancements, everything just kind of applies if you're on the line or your opponent is a unit that's on the line. And so you can design. So again, I have not played this, but I spoke to Adam Camilleri from Australia, who's well known in the community, and he played Gate Warden a few times and had some success with it. And it's about the way you're designing your list, whether or not you want to draw your line from your home to your natural expansion and just have like a really shooting heavy list that relies on you being able to be on the line and just shoot the crap out of everything that's out the front. There are a couple. I think there's one strat that doesn't rely on you being on the line, and so you do have some agency there. But yeah, it as you were saying, it is. I love the theme of it. I love the idea of it. I have never played it because I can't get my head around just how it would work and how I could do it without just advertising to my opponent exactly what my plan is and what I'm wanting to achieve here. And yeah, I just in my head I can't figure out how it works.
So what I'm hearing is the next iteration of this should be a triangle, so you have to do Pythagoras as you're setting the table.
Sure. It is a strong rule, though, right? If each time a model in this unit makes an attack that targets a visible enemy unit, you can ignore any or all modifiers to the hit roll, and weapons have sustained hits. So that is the detachment rule. While your knight unit is standing on the line, you get sustained hits against any visible unit.
I'm glad.
Can make that sustained hits too for 1 CP.
I'm glad they had the forethought to put visible on here, because every time I see that not there, I'm like, what indirect guns are there?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and the second part of the rule is if for whatever reason the objective that if you're going from one point to another point and one of those points gets removed because it gets burned or whatever, then you can pick another point, so you can change and have your line go in a different direction.
Now,
under those circumstances.
After you've read that part, I now want to see a game where two players are playing this in a mirror, and you're playing the weird mission no one ever plays, where you can move the objective markers so that you can move the line as the game is going on.
There isn't a rata in case that ever happens. You do get to move the line.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. So this constant movement of lines would be very funny. But is that even still a mission where the football one where you were just kind of knocking them around the place?
It is, but people don't put it in their tournament packs typically. Like, you can play it casually, is my understanding of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
so I got nothing on Gate Warden other than I've never played it. I could not figure out how to make it work, but Adam Camilleri has.
I mean, there's some funny enhancements here. The one that stands out to me is if there's the bearers on the defensive line, there's no enemy units on your defensive line, you add the OC to each model affected by their bondsman ability.
Yeah, see, that's so good. My biggest gripe of the game at the moment. This is my next video is about. It's in defense of L-shaped ruins. I actually like L-shaped ruins, and I like the big circle objective markers. As someone that played all the, I know a lot of people got into the game in the last 2 editions, right? A lot of you guys do not know how awkward it was trying to settle an argument who's scoring a point or try to not get shot. That's the reason why everyone hates Tau as well. Tau, you don't even have a reason to hate Tau anymore. They used to wipe you off the board no matter where you are. I actually like the current state of objectives and terrain. But the thing that I think is really annoying about this edition, I hate that the keywords are cool. Like I said earlier, having widespread access to lethal hits is great to deal with knights. But the game is so unified, or it's so every rule is just some variation of gain this keyword, do this, gain OC, gain this detachment's got cool rules. You can spread your OC to other knights over a line. That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting as a concept for sure. One that I always like to mock is every time they release a command squad or HQ in the last 6 months, there's almost always a redeploy rule. It's always redeploy 3, and there's always a vect.
Yeah, there are a lot of rules that have just they've got different names, but it's the same thing across so many different armies.
For sure. Is there anything else you want to highlight from this one, Chakra, before we move on?
I do think this detachment is probably the best way to run the Forge World Knights with the massive arms. Is it the Pi 4? Is it with P?
I
This
don't know.
you can create some absolutely unholy shooting with those things. It's like sustained hit 2 on 800 points worth of like anti-Titan guns. It's not good, right? You're investing too much. But like, my God, that's some damage you could produce.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've, as I said, I've not played it. We did do an episode of the show on it with Adam. So if people want to learn how to play it or try and figure it out, then maybe go listen to that. But
Okay, so
yeah,
Questoris Companions. You mentioned this one earlier. So this is you
Yeah.
get a second oath, not to be confused with Oath of Moment.
yeah. So this is the one where you pick a quality and a deed. Right at the start of the game, you pick your quality, which is, say, for example, I'm going to try and kill more units than the battle round. And then that's the deed you're trying to achieve. And the quality is movement. And that is, you're going to move an extra 2 inches and add 1 to your charge and add 1 to your advance. So that's what you pick right at the start. And then when you become honored by achieving the deed, you get to pick another quality. And you can do that, obviously, up to one more time. And so your army just becomes buff to the eyeballs. And I really like this detachment. This would be the one that I've played the most over the last 12 months or so, since it came out. The index came out. Sorry, since the codex came out, and I really like it. And it's had plenty of success. Dustin Hammond and Brian Jones both went 6-1 at Cherokee a few weeks ago with this detachment, although very different lists. It's just really strong. Strong.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've played against this one a couple of times. The thing that always stands out to me is that is it the once a game sustain hits 2 enhancement? I've seen that
Yes.
do some
Yeah.
heinous
So, and
things to people.
that's the other way the enhancements work in this is all of the enhancements, you put them on the knight, and the sustained hits 2, say, for example, goes on a lancer. And once you've used it, you've used it. But then when you become honored, it refreshes, so you get to use it again.
Mm.
So, for example, Dustin Hammond's build was triple lancer. One of them had that enhancement, and then he had 2 atroposes. This was all for durability because the lancer has a 4-up invul all the time, including in combat, and the atropos has a 5-up all the time, including in combat, which none of the others have. And so he would charge a lancer. He'd take the movement ability, move a lancer across the table, kill 2 things turn 1, and then be honored immediately. And so the rest of us, now the lancer is going to die, but then he's got 4 big knights that are buffed up that he can play the game with from then on. And he was just herb stomping people with that list and that strategy. If you can't roll 4-ups, then you fall over very quickly. But otherwise, that's a great plan, right?
Well, if you complete your oath really early, you do get 3 extra CP for those CP rerolls for the 4-up.
Right. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So you get, or it's 2 extra CP. In this detachment, it's 2 extra CP. And then if you get on it a second time, you get another 1 CP. I'm pretty sure is how it works.
Yes, that is correct. Regardless of how you
And
select your quality.
this is the detachment also that gives you access to a 6-up feel no pain. So your lancer with a 4-up invul can also have a 6-up feel no pain. But it is a strat, so you got to hope that if you walk through a wall, you didn't become battle shocked. This also has a 2 CP all back, shoot, and charge.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
it's got all the funnest stratagems: advance and charge, fall back, shoot, and charge.
Yeah,
Imagine having to pay for that. Couldn't be me and my Emperor's Children.
No, I was going to say, 2 CP4 back
Yeah.
shoot and charge wouldn't seem that good in any other army. But when it's a knight, it's like, okay, I understand why it costs 2 here.
Yeah, and that's actually okay, except that the guy that I play against the most has Cypher in his list, which means I can never use that because it costs me an extra CP. But it is like if you've got a lancer that can move with the extra movement buff on it, it can move 16, right? So if you don't kill it, it can just fall back out of combat through walls and across models and wherever 16 inches, and then charge into another thing and be on a point somewhere else. Like it just gives you so much agency to move like across a whole table and charge into something else.
Yeah, especially with that buff from the the oath thing. Yeah, the +2
Yeah,
move. They can get some serious movement out of that for sure.
yeah. +2 move and +1 to your charge. So you're going a long way.
Yeah.
And or if you've got a, I don't know, a Castellan that doesn't die and it can fall back and then just shoot whatever it wants, is with no penalty, is pretty strong.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess kind of going back to what Shakrot was saying about the previous attachment, I do kind of like the idea here where all the enhancements have that refresh when you complete your army rule thing.
Yeah,
It
this
feels
is
the
definitely
fancy.
a fun. That is a fun set of rules for this.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think a really interesting thing about Questoris Champions is this is probably the closest thing we have in 40k to an alternate win condition. Like in card games, you have a lot of alternate win conditions. A card that will like win the game, just say win the game without actually playing the rules of the game. If you're playing an opponent that has like an abundance of OC3, which is very common, OC3 and OC5 are very common breakpoints. All you have to do is whittle down whatever few OC6 and above units they have. And then if you use
Yeah.
the hero's tread stratagem 3 times, you kind of just win on the spot. Like they can never score primary again.
Yeah, so this is the one where we were talking about the sticky objectives, and it's at 5 OC. So you can stick in objective. If you've got Canis Rex on the list, he can just do it for free. Stick in objective and then charge forward. And it really is. It's really strong. That's probably the, as you were saying, that's the win condition. That is the strongest strat. That's the one that gets used the most often by these top players. They're sticking objectives all over the table, and then you've got to be able to put more than 5 OC on it to take it off. So if they want to, say, drop a couple of units onto your home objective, it has to be a couple. There are very few units that they can just pick up and drop down that will have more than 5 OC. And if they're committing doing that with a couple of units, then then they're possibly already in trouble.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the ones that stand out to me is that one and the advance and charge would probably be the two you're probably using most often, especially if you're playing Lancers, which I'm sure you are with that sustain its 2 enhancement.
100%. The Lancer is my favorite toy. I have 2 of these.
Very nice.
These are my favorite guys. Two Lancers running around the table with an Atropos, doing whatever they want.
I actually only just built and painted my first Lancer like 2 months before that thing's getting sent to Legends.
It's not. Don't say that. Don't say that. Oh,
now, if we're gonna talk about Legend, it's probably before that it will be the Atropos because it's resin.
I think that I don't want to doomsay. I think the Cerastus are definitely going. I've not got like any insight or anything. This is just my hunch. But like, what the fact they won't give it 40k boxing, that's so uncommittal. I think they're going.
They've just brought out the Lancer in plastic and something else. What was the other plastic one? The Castigator.
Yes.
Yeah. So I really hope you're wrong. That would be heartbreaking.
I hope I just bought
favorite.
mine. I hope I get to use it for long. I mean, I play Horus Heresy anyway, so I will use it. But I mean, I hope I get to keep using it in 40k.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sure we can talk about Legends as well again later, actually, because that might be an interesting discussion. But next we have Spearheaded Arms. I'm not actually that familiar with this one. Is this the Armiger one?
This is the Armiger one.
This is like the one I use 90% of games. I love this detachment.
Okay. I'll shut up then and just leave you to it. Go nuts.
I think the most interesting thing Knights has these days is its interaction between Big Knight and Small Knight. I think that's also the main thing that separates them from Chaos Knights. I think the interaction between big and small is very fun, very interesting, and like this is a brilliant detachment. Honestly, amazingly well designed. You said earlier the detachment rule, instead of 1 bondsman, you can use 3, or you can use 1 bondsman on 3 like armigers. With this, the way this works, you're building around 1. Most people build around 2. I know on your podcast you discussed like a 12 armiger 1 big knight list, which seems like a headache to play. But there's actually few big knights that are worth running here. I mean the standout is the defender. The defender, I don't even know if you really play him in other detachments, but he is like the center of your army. It's so fun to play. I call mine the Israeli defender because he's got his ion dome on top that never actually stops anything. But this is such a good attachment. All the way the stratagems work in this, all of them, is they only affect armigers, but they target a big knight. So you target a big knight with it, and the big knight will like broadcast that rule to 3 armigers. Which is just such a cool. It's powerful, right? It means you can like because there's like the first Valor strike, right? They wanted to do something similar. But that was just 1 CP, and then you just get like a third, 2/3 of your army has the rule, right? This is the same thing, but designed so much better because there is a hoop to jump through. You need to every turn. Bondsman abilities refresh in your command phase, so you need to be mindful of how you're positioning your big knights relative to your little knights. And then you broadcast effect, and there's some good effects. There's like add 1 to hit, add rapid fire, which is really nasty on the melter guns of the armigers. That like is a huge increase in damage. I had a Helverin one shot the Silent King a week or 2 back with that rapid fire ability. Huge damage there. Or like I think it got its like 4 wounds. It like absolutely ruined it in 1 shot. Crazy high roll.
That's still mad.
Yeah, and there's like armor of contempt on like 3 armigers. It's so good. So it's such a fun detachment.
The thing about these strats is that the strats automatically go on to the armigers that have been bonded by that big knight. So if you've got a big knight handing out a bondsman ability to 3 knights, say the defender makes 3 baby knights -1 to hit, and then you spend that strat for basically armor of contempt, that goes on to those same 3 armigers that have been bonded by the big knight. So they're now -1 to hit and armor of contempt. Sorry, -1 damage, and armor of contempt.
It's durable,
essentially. So they become really durable. Another great one is you get to add 1 to the AP. So you've got another knight, the Warden or the Castigator have a really similar ability. They're going to bond 3 armiger Helberins, for example, which get a bunch of shots. And the Bondsman ability is that they're ignoring cover, or +1 AP, essentially, depending on which one you're taking. So they're handing out that Bondsman ability to 3 armigers, and then you spend a CP, and the CP strat is +1 AP again. So now you've got a Helverin that is AP3 or AP2 ignoring cover on 8 shots, and you can reroll 1 of them, and it's just that suddenly becomes really, really strong, right? And in fact, with the Castigator, the ability is sustained hits as well. So if you've got a Castigator handing out that Bondsman ability of getting sustained hits, they're ignoring cover, and now they're an extra AP on 3 Helverins with 8 shots each on the big guns, 3 damage at AP3. Now we're talking. So there's ways to make the army do a lot of damage, and there's ways to make the army really durable, or both.
Yeah, I like that.
There's actually there's a really cheeky loophole with what you just said. The detachment rule states that you can't use the same bondsman. But you just mentioned the it's one of the Cerastus and then the Warden. They have essentially the exact same ability.
Yeah, one of them is extra AP, and the other one is ignores cover. So it's essentially the same, but it's not the same. So you could use both of them. Yeah.
The very first thing I did with this book was because I thought that was such an amusing loophole. I took 6 Helverins and then both of those big knights, and it was just like a pure mono shooting. And the first game I played of it, I wiped my opponent off the board like turn 2. It was incredible, and then it never worked ever again.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. You don't have the same ability to defend yourself.
Now, caveat there, ignores cover in 11th will be -1 to hit.
Right, yeah. So that's all going to change.
So I have a couple of small thoughts here. One, this is one of the ones I have, now that I remember, I played against very briefly, and it's interesting that there's multiple different skews you could do there. Like there's some more offensive skews and more defensive skews, so I like that there's a bit of wiggle room there. Secondly, for Steve, you mentioned you'd like silly ideas from your podcast. I have a really silly idea here.
Go on.
It requires allies, unfortunately. Have you read the Rogue Trader Entourage by chance?
Yep. Yeah.
Redeploy D3 battle line units.
Yeah.
Attach it to a Navy Breacher unit as an ally. It can infiltrate itself in a 14-man long brick and redeploy itself in up to 2 armigers. And then it also denies Cull the Horde and Assassinate if the rest of the list is just armigers.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really stupid.
It's actually, I was going to mention before when we were talking allies, that's actually a really popular, or has been a really popular choice. The Rogue Trader Entourage Imperial Navy Breaches Brick, RTEB as we call it in the Discord. And that just specifically for that reason. When the index was around, that was something people would do, and it also gives you the ability to redeploy, but also great screening against things like World Eaters or Blood Angels or whatever's going to be just charging at you turn one. That's a popular choice. I really like it. It's got lots of the jank as well because you get to repair. You can bring bodies back, and there's 4-up invols on a couple of the models, and yeah, it's potentially really strong. It's 195 points for that combo. So it's a lot, but the redeploy is really good.
No, this is really silly. I'm in your Discord. I chat in your Discord every now and again. I see those letters. What is it? RTE. I just assumed that was rapid fire battle cannon, and I could never understand what they were talking about. I was like, what's a rapid fire battle cannon got to do with this?
You know, fire starts with an
about.
F, not a T, right?
I'm very. I got the JFK Junior brainworm. I'm very bad with numbers and letters.
It's Rogue Trader Entourage Breaches combo. The RTEB is how people, but it's a good one, popular.
Sure. I mean, if you want to hear more about it, the video I did with Folger earlier this week, he talks about that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
So next one, we touched on it briefly earlier. Is the Freeblade Company, the new one?
The thing with this one, this is totally baseless, right? Totally baseless. Don't read into this at all. But there was like a really stupid rumor that I had seen going around a bit that knights were going to kind of get phased out the game. And like it was with another army. It was like knights and something else were going to get phased out the game. They were going to be like purely like allies you brought in. It's obviously stupid, right? It's not going to happen. It's ridiculous. I've paid no thought to it. They released this detachment. They announced it. This thing reads like a eulogy. This is like the best of Imperial Knights throughout the ages. This is actually eerily like a fucking eulogy.
I really hope it's not. Obviously, that would make me like if they're going to send everything to Legends and phase Knights out and make them allies, that would be sad. But it wouldn't be the first army in the history of the game that's happened to. But I hope it ain't. This detachment is really good, or it seems on paper it seems really good, and this is certainly what I'll be pivoting to for the next little while. I think we've got a couple of months left before 11th dropped, and so this is what I'll be playing for the last couple of months of 10th.
I mean, first off, Sharot's job here is clearly to give Steve a heart attack every 5 minutes by mentioning things.
Apparently so, yeah. That's yeah. Thanks for that. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah,
and you've
sorry.
No, we've pointed out how old I am. A heart attack is a legitimate outcome here. So the army rule for this is Imperial Knights models from your army have the Feel No Pain 6-up ability. In addition, at the start of your command phase, the start being important, you get a wound back. You get to regain 1 lost wound.
We did it.
I don't know how important that is, but that's good.
We did it. Armigers and rhinos.
Sorry, a little flavor thing about this. I didn't play knights during the index days. The knight when they got their Feel No Pain, they didn't get the regen wound, right?
No, they did not.
No, what I believe this is a throwback to is for the longest time when you played knights, you had to pick an alignment. You could be Imperial, Mechanicus, or Freeblade. And when you picked Mechanicus, which I think most people did back then, because also like I think stratagems, if I remember correctly, this was a long time ago now. Like your stratagems would only work on like one alignment of knights. There were no other rules. It was really stupid. But when you picked Mechanicus, you got every model got 1 wound back every turn. So I think it's like a little throwback to that.
Yeah, and House Tyrannus had the 6-up Feel No Pain. So this is kind of like just going straight back to that. It's the House Tyrannus, which was probably the most popular one to run. 6-up Feel No Pain, and because it was Mechanicus, you get a point back, get a wound back. The people who've been playing Quest to Forge Pact are grumpy because that also gets a wound back. I don't know if we need to talk about that detachment because only one person in the world plays it, but That is the if you the Knights models in Quest of Forge pack get a wound back. So this is stealing from that. But it had the big thing about this is the enhancements that you have on your that you're able to put on character knights. And the Destria, the new model, is a character knight, right? So this gets to go into this detachment and automatically get an enhancement, which is my favorite one, called the Bringer of Justice. Bringer of Justice, improve the attacks characteristic of the melee weapons equipped by the bearer by 2. So you get 2 extra attacks and add 1 to the hit roll. So now it's if you equip a Destria with both the melee options, you get 2 extra attacks just on the data sheet.
Yeah.
Now you get another 2 attacks and you're hitting on 2s. So this thing is like a flying missile that you just shoot in and just wipe stuff out. It's going to be so good.
Yeah, I was interested in that one because I just with the datasheet alone, and I'm sure we can touch on the Destria or Destrier because I think that's technically a French word, isn't it?
My wife is French. I'll ask her and see what she says.
But I wasn't sure from that datasheet whether you actually took the 2 weapons because +2 attacks doesn't seem worth dropping the entire gun, but maybe it is worth it in this particular detachment.
Well, my understanding. So again, talking to Adam Camilleri, who just won an RTT with this detachment a couple of days ago because he was allowed to play it. His feeling on playing some practice games with the gun is that the gun is okay, but when you add both the melee options, you're then talking about a Thunderstrike Gauntlet. No, that isn't. That's the wrong model. I'm looking at the errant. I beg your pardon. The Destrier. You've got the Chainsword or the Thundershock Spear. So the Spear would give you 6 attacks, no, 8 attacks with the enhancement, 8 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 12, AP 3, and the big thing is the damage is D3 plus 3. So 8 attacks on with that profile, if you're taking a reroll, that thing is going to mince pretty much whatever it touches. Or you could use the Chainsword, which is likewise 10 attacks on the sweep, or 5 that goes to 7, that goes to 9 attacks on 2, strength 12, AP3, D3 plus 3 damage. And the great thing about the spear is it has lance as well, so you're wounding most things on at least 3s, probably 2s.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
Really,
I think
really embarrassing with the something really embarrassing with like the modular design of this. When they revealed this, I got a DM from Astra, and he was like, "Man, you've seen the rules. Like, how are you going to build it? Do you think two melee weapons?" And I was like, "You got to be a freaking punk to pick 2 melee weapons. You're losing an activation. You can't be losing an activation." And then shortly after that, every opinion from everyone ever was like, "Oh, you got to take 2 melee weapons." And I was like, "Fuck!
Yeah.
I hope Astra does not watch anything Imperial Knights related." I look like such a
Well, the other viable option though is to take both guns. I think you've got to do one or the other because having the one melee weapon and the gun just isn't doing enough. If you take both guns, then you've got like a mini horde clearing proposition, which is something we don't really have in a lot of other. Like we just don't have the ability to clear hordes, I think, on very many models. So having 250 points is probably a little on the high side, but no, it is what it is. That may come down. Hopefully, it comes down.
Yeah, I'll definitely. I mean, we can talk briefly about the Destrier, the new one.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see if it sees any players allies because it's interesting to have a knight that is cheaper than a standard big knight as an ally option because that's never really been a thing before as well. But
Yeah. Well, interestingly, at the RTT where that Adam just won, he did not take one. Like he just 250 is a lot cheaper than a big knight, but it's still like it's still a reasonable number of points that you can do other things with. You can get almost 2 baby knights, right, with that many points. So,
I mean, if we're comparing to like other army releases lately, it's the same cost as the new Defiler.
Yeah, which is.
I don't want to talk about the new Defiler, guys. I woke up 1 minute past 10, sold out.
Oh no!
1 minute late, dude. That's like I expect that in like Pokemon maybe. I've never seen anything like that in 40K.
Yeah, I think it's one of those like everything overlapped scenarios. Like it's a good update to an old model that people loved. It's part of 5 different armies.
Yeah, it's just the The points value being the same as the new Defiler when the Defiler is clearly so good is a little rough. I do hope it comes down. You know, who knows what's going to happen. And they've obviously designed it with 11th in mind, but it's good. I think it has a role. And I think because I've just spent 350 New Zealand dollars buying one, I'm going to put it in
Good
list.
lord.
Yeah. We pay a lot of money for our toys on this side of the world.
Clearly, there's a market for people in the UK here buying stuff and moving to New Zealand. No, don't do that. That's probably not. That's probably legal issues doing that. Don't do that.
Probably.
But in serious, I kind of like this approach to data sheet design. It's an interesting way to do it. Like the idea of if you take the guns, you get this benefit. If you take the melee weapons, you get this other benefit, and they're both baked into the data sheet.
Yeah.
Just something you don't tend to see tons of quite often these days. They split them into multiple different data sheets. Like for example, I mean, we can briefly touch on the Questoris Forge pack thing because they have access to some Admech models. The new Admech infantry, for example, they split into two data sheets, and they each have one rule on the data sheet. Whereas this is like you put 3 rules on the same data sheet. Depending on the gun you take, you get X instead of Y. It is another approach to that, which is interesting. Any other closing thoughts on Freeblade? I guess my last thought here is, as someone that doesn't know Knights, it's interesting to me that Freeblade Company doesn't have anything relating to ally rules when Freeblades are the name of the ally rules you guys have.
Yeah. Well, it's
I think about that. I think the original Freeblade Lance. This is Freeblade Company.
Yes.
They added
Freeblade
like
Company,
I believe Freeblade Lance was like the first. They were like Army of Renowns, right? I think it was the first Army of Renowns, right? Which kind of became what detachments are now. So I think even though it's not allies related, I think that's why we got a Freeblade detachment.
The other thing that we haven't mentioned that we should, I did say the enhancements are amazing. Mysterious Guardian is back, so this is uppy downy on a big knight. You can put this enhancement on a big knight, which gives it the deep strike rule and also gives you the ability once per game to lift it up and put it down somewhere else, which was an auto take in the index, and it's just so good. Sanctuary is the bearer has a 5-up invul save, so you can make anything an Atropos basically. It just has a 5-up invul all the time.
I think I had Sanctuary in every list I ever made for about a 5-year span.
Yeah, it's so good.
Actually, when that went.
And then Hunter's Eye, which means all the ranged weapons have ignores cover, which you put that on a paladin, suddenly you've got a lot of shots that are ignoring cover. That becomes very strong.
Yeah, makes sense. I wasn't going to say until we got to this one. I noticed almost every enhancement we hit so far, up until this detachment, was 20 points or less, except for one, I think. I'm surprised at how cheap some of these enhancements are. But I suppose that minutia of points cost difference probably matters less for Knights than it does for other armies. Like for another army, that 10-point difference is like the difference between a chaff unit and like a decent trading unit.
Yeah, and as we were saying earlier on, quite often you'll build a Knights list and you'll have like a random 40-point hole just because all the units cost so much. And then you go, okay, well, I can put a 30-point enhancement on something and that just kind of helps fill that hole.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, I know you don't want to spend too long on it because people don't really play it, but maybe it's interesting in the sense of maybe we can talk about why people don't play it.
The reason I don't, this is like we're on about Questoris, right?
Yes.
The reason I don't like this one, even though I have a large Admech army, is this is so uncommittal. This is such an uncommittal detachment. It's Admech soup, but you can only have 500, not the usual 1,000. You can only have 500 points of Admech, and you're limited to like the most boring lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's Sidonian Skatros?
You can
I remember the first time I read
take Vanguard units or Ranger units and literally a couple of characters, and that's it. There's so much. I mean, if you had access to some of the other Admech stuff, some of the really cool stuff, that would be amazing. But
well, I think
you don't.
Coming from the Admech side of things and looking at these data sheets, these are all data sheets that are not good data sheets. And this is because the way Admech has been in 10th edition is that their data sheets have been, I don't want to say bad because some of them are now good because they've been changed 12 times. Are largely good because of how strong Admech's detachments and army rule has become. Their army rule now gives you, for example, assault +1 AP and +1 weapon skill to everything.
Yeah.
But you don't get that here.
And it does give you access to sticky objectives and
Yes.
scout. And screening, which we don't have, right? So there is, look, on paper that there is a way to make this work, and as I said before, a guy named Jind Thing has made it work and has had some success with this. But I really think you're going to have to just play this and nothing but this for a while to really get the hang of how it works and how to maximize what you've got available. Just because the Ranger units, the Vanguard units are, as you've already said, that they're not the best data sheet. It does give Knights players access to something they haven't had, but then the repairing one wound without the 6-up Feel No Pain, the repairing one wound on your Knights is meh. The Knight is dead. You're not going to get to repair a wound. And other than the stratagem where you get to do a mini Overwatch, there's really not a lot else going for it.
Actually, something I've just noticed. The most insulting part of this allying in Admech stuff is you can't ally in the Tech Priest engine seer, the one that actually repairs vehicles.
Right.
Where is he?
Yeah.
I think the reason you can't do that is because that model gives a vehicle a 5-up Feel No Pain.
I mean, yes. However, it specifies Admech model, so you can't actually do that
That's true.
anyway.
I think this detachment in like a millisecond goes from a joke to one of the best things Knights can do if they could just use the infiltrators.
That may be true.
I've played it in a couple of practice games, and it's just really, really underwhelming. Like I love the idea of all the screening and the scout, the sticky objectives, all of it does give you access to some things that we don't otherwise get access to. But the Vanguard and Ranger units just die very quickly, and then you've got it's 500 points that you've spent on those things that your Knights are now exposed anyway, and off you go. I struggle to play it.
I think the thing is, like, if it's for the screening purpose, I feel like I would be way more tempted to just play another detachment and ally in like a subductor squad, which is like 10 more points than a Ranger or Vanguard. Actually, I think it's 5 more points than the Vanguard squad. And for that, you get 11 guys with a 3-up armor save.
Yeah, and an invul.
And a 4-up invul, yeah, so even better there as well. Well, obviously you do lose the sticky, but then you could do the immolator thing we were talking about earlier with the sisters.
Yeah, or put the subductor squad into the Questoris Champions and have sticky objectives as a strat that you can play anyway. But yeah, there's lots of I think it's fine, it's playable, but there are other better options. And that's always the way, right? It's perfectly fine if that's what you want to do, but a lot of the other options you have are better.
Yeah, I think even if it was to stay bad, I kind of just wish that this was more interesting. Like when you're doing weird stuff with Admech, you kind of expect something a bit wacky, and it doesn't really do that. It's kind of just a generic slight damage buff and slight heal, which isn't the most inspiring thing in the world. Like if this was on the level of the one we were talking about earlier with the you draw the line through the battlefield kind of thing, I'd be like, I would play this casually all the time. I'm not that familiar with Knights in Crusade. I don't know if either of you have played Knights in Crusade, but I sometimes mention Crusade in boarding actions because
I know it's considered a bit rude to play Knights in Crusade. That's all I know.
Yeah, that would not be
completely
not
fair.
Something I've done.
Yeah, I know casual players especially probably aren't as fond of Knights as we mentioned towards the start, but that's completely fair. So I guess that's all the detachments. I mean, we briefly touched on the Destrier and the Defender as like the most recent additions to Knights. Is there anything you two would like for the future of Knights, whether that be around now or just like 11th and beyond?
Really struggle with this question only because, as I said right at the start, it's so hard to balance. The one thing I have always wanted was a middle-sized Knight, which we just got. So,
that was my big ask as well.
Sorry, say again.
That was my big one as well. I wanted a middle-sized Knight.
Yeah. I feel like Knights are in a pretty good place, and with what we've seen of the 11th rules so far, I feel like it's going to make sense for us to be able to build like whatever we want to be building in terms of the different types of armies that are available, and you can either go nuts on just wanting to full send, or you can build something more defensive and gunliney, or whatever you want to do, and you'll be able to have play. What we've seen. Yeah, I think we're in. I think we're in a pretty solid spot. And I have to spend some more time trying to get my head around how 11th is going to work before I can fully understand how Knights will play in it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that very much applies to most armies, I suppose. Is there? I mean, for either of you, I guess Shackle probably has more experience in the past. Is there any like old detachments or themes you'd like to see come back in like detachments? Because they are releasing.
I want exactly the stratagem that lets that has a thunder gauntlet throw a vehicle. I missed that so badly.
Is that a thing?
There's like literally never been a reason to use the thunder gauntlet except that.
Yeah.
Okay, Thunder Gauntlet. I know people will also meme the harpoon for a while. I don't know if that's ever been good or not, but
Harpoon's great, but it's range 12 or 18. It's this is on the Valiant. Yeah, the Valiant is, as we've already said, not great. But so I guess that's what I'd like to see the return of the Valiant, because I have one on my shelf up there. I'd like to be able to play it.
fair. I mean, we touched on the legend stuff earlier. Are there any of these you're expecting to lose come 11th because of the whole resin thing? You're like, no,
No,
please
All of them. I think
they're all going to be fine.
I hope they're
They're all
not. I
gonna be
really
fine.
hope they're not.
I do like the chunky ones. Is it the Porphyrion? Is that a really chunky one?
It's they're huge. It's like 700, 800 points. I've never played one. I don't have one. I have never played one. But I have seen it on the table at a tournament, and it's one of the. It's you win quick or you lose quick, and then you go and have a beer and you're done.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a good rounding off point, to be fair. So, any closing thoughts from either of you before I round off?
Well,
Sorry, you go.
no, I was just going to say I really appreciate being on here and having the chance to big up Knights, because I love playing them, and hoping that my Rastus Knights don't go to Legends. I think they're going to be a lot of fun in 11th.
Chakra?
I think even though I don't play Knights too much anymore, I'm very content with my Emperor's Children. Glad we finally have them. I'm very happy. Knights are probably the most fun to play against they've ever been. Still not like they're still not fantastic to play against, but great direction. And I hope they continue to make it even better.
Yeah, it's definitely progress from the stat check that happened in middle of 10th. That's for sure. All right. Well, so for people who've seen my stuff before, Shackrock, they know where to find you down below. Check out his stuff, and eventually he'll release a video on the London GT he has promised us.
Any day now.
And Steve, you can go check him out at 40k by night, which again I will link down below. So thank you to the both of you for joining me. You can check out the rest of the videos in this series on my channel. There's a playlist of them. I'll link that below as well. And yeah, we'll see you all later.